Shade had been working as a maid in the Johnson household for only 6 months, but she already knew the rhythms of the house better than the family themselves. Madame Linda was a wealthy businesswoman, firm but fair. Her husband, Mr. Adewale, was quieter, more reserved, always buried in work or paperwork. Their marriage was respectable, but distant, like two people who respected each other more than they loved each other. Shade, barely 23, was sharp-eyed and observant. She noticed how rarely Mr. Adewale smiled around Madame Linda, and how his eyes lingered a second too long when she entered a room. Shade had come from a humble background. Her mother was a seamstress, her father long gone, and she had always been taught to work hard and stay in her lane. But Linda's house was a different world. Marble floors, soft couches, expensive wine, and a husband who began to notice her more with each passing day. It started with small things, a compliment here and there. "Shade, you clean better than any maid we've had." Then came the gifts. A bottle of perfume left in her quarters, a pair of shoes that were mysteriously the right size, and a phone that someone forgot in the guest room, which he told her to keep. Shade felt the lines blurring. She knew Madame Linda trusted her, often leaving her alone in the house with Mr. Adewale during business trips. The first real moment came one evening when Shade brought dinner to the study. Adewale looked up from his laptop, took one look at her, and said, "Do you know you're more beautiful than you think?" Shade froze. She should have walked out. But something in his tone, and maybe in her own desires, made her stay a moment longer. What began as glances became touches. What became touches became whispers. Soon, Mr. Adewale and Shade were involved in a full-blown affair behind Madame Linda's back. Every time Linda traveled, Shade stayed in the master bedroom. She wore Linda's nightgowns, sprayed her perfume, and laid in her bed beside her husband. Shade told herself it was love. She deserved better than being a maid. She had beauty, charm, and now influence. When Madame Linda discovered she could not conceive after years of trying, Shade felt a twisted sense of justification. "Maybe I was meant to be here," she thought. "Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next jaw-dropping story." Months passed. Shade grew bolder. She no longer feared being caught. Mr. Adewale had fallen hard for her, and soon he started talking about divorce. "Linda doesn't make me feel alive anymore," he whispered one night. Shade smiled. Her plan was working. She was no longer the maid. She was becoming the madam. Linda was devastated when the truth came out. It wasn't just the betrayal of her husband. It was the betrayal of the girl she had trusted, like a younger sister. Linda didn't scream. She simply packed her things and moved out, quietly. Within weeks, Shade moved into the master bedroom full-time. Staff began to treat her with new respect. She walked with her head higher, gave orders, wore Linda's clothes, and hosted guests. She had climbed the ladder without ever leaving the house. But what Shade didn't know was that karma wasn't sleeping. A few months after Linda left, business deals started crumbling. Mr. Adewale was being investigated for financial misconduct. He had once relied on Linda's connections to keep his empire clean. Without her, things got messy. The house Shade once ruled was now quiet, empty, and full of stress. Mr. Adewale began drinking heavily. He was no longer the doting lover. He became irritable and cold. He stopped buying her gifts. He barely touched her. She was now just there. Then one morning, Shade woke up to find a legal notice on the front table. The house was under foreclosure. Accounts were frozen. Mr. Adewale had gone missing. Just like that, everything unraveled. Left with nothing but a few clothes and fading memories, Shade sat alone in the once luxurious living room. Staff had left. Bills piled up. The woman who had taken another woman's place now understood what it meant to lose it all. She reached out to Linda, begging for forgiveness, for help, for anything. Linda didn't reply. Instead, a new woman moved into the neighborhood, a distant cousin of Linda, who had bought the house from the bank. Shade was forced to return to her old town, where she was no longer just poor, but disgraced. She found a small job cleaning at a school, every day walking past girls who reminded her of who she once was, young, hopeful, naive. And as she swept the dusty floor one evening, she whispered to herself, "I wanted to be Madam, but I never thought of what it meant to truly earn it. Would you ever forgive a maid who stole your husband if she came back years later, asking for help? Or should betrayal always be the final line?" The next day, Chica gathered her courage and visited Linda. She lived in a modest apartment on the quieter side of town, far from the mansion's marble floors and grand chandeliers. It was peaceful, simple, but warm. Linda welcomed her with a calmness that Chica didn't expect. There was no anger in her eyes, just the quiet strength of someone who had healed. "I knew about you 2 months before I left," Linda said as she poured tea. "But I didn't confront you because I had a plan." Chica lowered her eyes, shame rising in her throat. "Why didn't you stop me?" Linda leaned back in her chair. "Because you weren't the first. Adewale has done this before. Used women, lied to them, discarded them when he was done. But you got pregnant. That changed the game." Chica's eyes widened. "You knew?" "I suspected, and when I saw you at the hospital, it was confirmed." Linda paused, then continued. "That's when I decided to walk away. Not because I was weak, but because I chose myself." Chica was silent. The woman she had betrayed was offering her kindness, dignity she never gave in return. "I rebuilt from scratch," Linda said. "Started a consultancy firm, moved out here. I'm engaged now. He's a kind man. Real love, not performance." Chica's voice was barely a whisper. "Why are you telling me this?" Linda looked at her with firm but gentle eyes. "Because you don't owe Adewale anything. You gave him everything, and he broke you. You have children now. You need to be strong for them. Take them and go. I can help." Tears welled in Chica's eyes, not because she was afraid, but because for the first time in years she felt seen. She nodded slowly, the weight in her chest starting to shift. What would you do if the person you betrayed turned out to be your only lifeline? Would you take the help or walk away in pride? Let's talk in the comments.